Welcome to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Advocates in Anchorage, Alaska are asking whether a more thorough response earlier in the investigation of a missing young woman could have made a difference. Kelly Hunt's body was discovered in April, 4 months after she was reported missing. It's just one case friends, family, and advocates are reflecting on during Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Day. We'll get a status check on efforts to address the disproportionate number of Native people who are murdered or go missing. That's right after the news.
This is National Native News. I'm Jill Freitas. Indigenous activists are reacting to news that President Donald Trump recently issued a presidential border crossing permit for the Bridger Pipeline in north-central Montana. Yellowstone Public Radio's Kayla DeRoche reports.
The Bridger Pipeline would start in Phillips County, Montana, at the Canadian border and carry Alberta oil sands down through eastern Montana. Fort Peck Assiniboine tribal member and Wolf Point City Councilman Lance Forstar says he fought for years against the Keystone XL pipeline.
This was all kind of new to me. I was hoping that it wasn't real and that this was just a rumor.
Indigenous activists and environmental groups have been rallying around the public comment period for the Bridger Pipeline's environmental analysis. Forstar says he's disappointed by the presidential approval, but not surprised.
That sinking feeling didn't happen this time.
The pipeline still needs several permits to go ahead. In Billings, I'm Kayla DeRoche.
The Norton Sound community of Shaktoolik said their goodbyes to Kelly Hunt at a memorial service this Saturday. She was the 19-year-old whose remains were found in a ravine in Spenard 2 weeks ago, following her disappearance in January. Friends and family gathered in the school gym for a simple but emotional service, with arms held open and voices raised in song.
And the tree of life is blooming, and the roses never fade.
Prayers to bring Kelly Hunt home were finally answered, though not in the way the community had hoped. She was last seen visiting friends in Anchorage on her way to attend the Alaska Christian College in Anchorage. During the service, the lingering question of what happened to Hunt was set aside to grieve and remember her as a young person who was so full of life and potential, qualities that Linda Bukolik says she cherishes. In her more than 2 decades as a teacher in Shaktoolik, she remembers Hunt as one of the community's most promising students.
She was always positive and willing to jump in and help no matter where. She was very diligent in school. She always had a smile on her face.
Bukolik says everyone at the school encouraged Hunt to go to college. The community even raised money to help her with her expenses because they were proud of how she had overcome so many challenges at an early age. Anchorage police continue to investigate her case, with no word yet on how she died. No suspects have been arrested. This story was provided by KMBA's Rhonda McBride. The ocelot is seldom seen in the Southwest anymore. Few animals from the wild spotted cat species still roam between the borderlands of northern Mexico and southern Arizona. But as KJZZ's Gabriel Pietracia reports, a group of tribal youth with ties to this now endangered creature has bestowed one with an indigenous name.
Tucson High School first-year Isaac Valencia was among nearly 36 OFFM students, part of the Voices of Our Youth program, working with a tribal linguist. Then, a couple hundred ballots were cast to decide a fitting moniker through a recent online vote.
When I came up with the name, I named it an Autumn. Himdam means traveler, like he has an untold story.
Himdam was first spotted in the Atascosa Highlands in 2024. More sightings of the same feline soon followed in the Whetstone, Patagonia, and Santa Rita mountain ranges. The nonprofit Center for Biological Diversity shared insights about ocelots and their fragile habitat with this group of students. For 14-year-old Valencia, who is from the San Javier district of the Fauna O'ahu Nation, Himdam's survival is inspiring.
It makes me real proud.
And naming the rare cat means so much more. For National Native News, I'm Gabriel Pietracia.
And I'm Jill Freitas.
National Native News is produced by Koahnic Broadcast Corporation with funding by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Support for law and justice-related programming provided by Hobbs, Strauss, Dean & Walker, LLP, a national law firm dedicated to promoting and defending tribal rights for over 40 years. More information available at hobbsstrauss.com.
Tribal Development Partners, helping tribes build toward their goals through 105L leasing and essential facility development, empowering sovereignty, strengthening community. More at tribaldevpartners.com, proud supporters of this show.
Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.
This is Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Friends, family, and MMIP advocates in Anchorage, Alaska fault police for dragging their feet following an initial missing persons report for 19-year-old Kelly Hunt in January. Hunt's body was found in April, and her death is under investigation. It's the latest case that exposes a persistent lack of trust in law enforcement officials when it comes to missing and murdered Native people. And it comes as the Trump administration is touting a surge in federal agents in selected urban locations to address a backlog in unsolved serious crimes. Many tribal leaders and advocates say they have yet to see real progress in the lingering disconnect between Native people and law enforcement officials on all levels. And despite recent efforts, there are still hurdles when it comes to jurisdictional confusion and information sharing across agencies. You can join our conversation today about missing and murdered Indigenous people by calling us at 1-800-996-2848. How are you and your community acknowledging MMIP today? Let us know. The number again, 1-800-996-2848. Also, 1-800-99-NATIVE. Joining us now from the Gila River Indian Community Reservation is Stephen Rowe Lewis. He is the governor of the Gila River Indian Community. Governor Lewis, good morning, and welcome back to Native America Calling.
Skugsiatic. Sami Masma, good morning.
Good morning to you as well. Also joining us from the Gila River Indian Community is Regina Antone, Lieutenant Governor of Gila River Indian Community. Lieutenant Governor Antone, good morning to you as well.
Good morning. Blessings to everyone.
Blessings to you. And joining us via Zoom from Palmer, Alaska, we have Alexis Savage. She is an MMIP advocate, and she is Inupiaq. Good morning, Alexis, and welcome to our show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
And our fourth guest joins us from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Lorenda Morgan. She is the Cheyenne and Arapaho MMIP chapter chairwoman and the governmental affairs officer for the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. Of course, she's also a member of the tribe. Lorenda, great to have you back on the show. Welcome back.
Pivawana, Niyakit. Thank you for having me.
Thanks to all of you for joining us today. I know it's a busy day for you as our guests. And Governor Lewis, I want to begin with you because you are located near Phoenix, Arizona, which is a selected city in the FBI's surge of agents to tackle serious crimes. It's connected to Operation Not Forgotten. What's your assessment of the federal initiative's performance since its inception about 4 years ago?
Well, this is, of course, May 5th, which is the national recognition of MMIP across the United States and Indian country. Any and all resources, especially from our federal partners, are so needed with tribes. With Arizona, home to 22 tribes, Phoenix and Tucson, one of the largest urban populations as well of tribes across Indian country. In so many ways, this is ground zero. For this, whether you call it an epidemic, whether you call it a public health emergency. I know, our native Indian country, national Indian orgs, they label it as such when it is. It's an ongoing crisis. For the Gila River Indian community, we value our partnerships stateside and with our federal partners as well. But as a tribal leader who's on the front lines for this, and myself and Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone, we have to rely on ourselves. We have to build up the capacity, to address this ourselves, right? Through our victims and family services, we have our own missing and murdered Indigenous person unit that is jurisdictional, where it works with our tribal social services, our victim services, our police department as well. And this was funded, through, we have our community council, 17-member council, and, tribal leaders, especially, within tribes and across Indian country, we have to be on the same page and we have to be supportive. And I'm so proud of our leadership on Gila River, that we see the importance of this and investing in resources such as this. Our MMIP unit, we have had what's called recovery of community members who were classified as MMIP. Our MMIP unit has gone, outside of Gila River and sometimes outside of the state as well, to bring back community members who were in MMIP situations where they were, it was life and death, right? They were in imminent harm, and we were the ones that as our community, as our law enforcement, as our tribal social services, working in concert together from a coordinated approach. But also, I think what's just as important is building those relationships, right, with local, state, and federal authorities as well. Having that respect for our tribal police, for our missing and murdered, our MMIP unit, having that respect and that open coordination and communication, right, with local, state, and federal authorities is critical. Because as you know, and those that are subject matter experts here, time is of the essence. And when you have those protocols, that we can follow through, that we have, partners, both law enforcement as well as stateside, that we can work with, that is so critical, in these situations.
All right. Thank you, Governor Lewis, for kicking off the conversation. Let's talk more about what Governor Lewis refers to as critical relationships with regard to MMIP initiatives. And to do that, Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone is also on the show. And Lieutenant Governor, let's talk more about Operation Not Forgotten. And what exactly is Gila River doing to support these new FBI agents that are working to solve MMIP cases there in Arizona and surrounding communities?
Thank you for that. So with the Gila River, just like Governor was mentioning, by forming this MMIP response team, we were able to provide the additional trainings. And we're fortunate enough that around our area within, like you're saying, Phoenix, we're being able to connect with everybody locally here so that we can also train them. We're actually one of the first tribes within our area to actually have this team formed together. They're 24/7, so as soon as something's activated, they're on it, they're solving it, they're on the plane, they're doing whatever they can. So no other tribe has had that, so we are fortunate enough through our Crime Victim Services program that holds this, that they go out and do presentations to other tribes to help formulate a team that way, so that this is a place to go. But it's also educating our people, like when this happens, who's it first call to, who activates, which departments move forward. So it's that educational training and awareness to get it out and just to keep talking about it. And that's why they do the prayer vigils, they do the walks, they do the continued support of the families, the aftercare, while they're going through it, those kind of things. They've even done some financial help with them. So, I'm very lucky and proud to have that move forward.
Sounds like a lot of progress being made, Lieutenant Governor. I also want to ask you, now that you folks have been engaged in these efforts for a number of years, can you look back now and really assess what's working the best and maybe what's not working so well and what can be improved?
I think the communication and the forming the bonds with even our grassroots, because they're the ones that started this before anything ever started, was the grassroots ones were the families themselves that were just coming together and now being able to speak and advocate and support at higher levels. So different levels are forming. So it's being able to filter up to like the federal, state levels kind of thing. And so that's why the combination of all groups work, and then even having the children, so that you can remember it from generation to generation so they're not forgotten. It's a continued push. So I think that's kind of where it goes with it.
All right. Governor Lewis, back to you. I'm interested also in understanding more about what tribal leaders such as yourselves, advocates, even families can do to hold law enforcement accountable when it comes to these statistics that I've heard you and others talk about on our show so many times.
Well, that's the problem, right? There is no national clearinghouse for statistics on MMIP, cold cases, on our missing relatives, right? Not at the national level or at least in Arizona at the state level as well. That's what we need. We need that data. I know that there has been pushes from other groups, and I think that is welcome. But I think what we still need is for Gila River. We're doing what we can, but there needs to be more resources put in, for tribes. As a tribal leader, I see this. We see this, me, Lieutenant Governor. We need more resources, preventative resources. We need more resources for the victims' families. We need more resources for both for recovery and post-recovery efforts, right? When we bring those relatives back, our community members, they've been through traumatic trauma that they need to deal with, as survivors, and to live, a meaningful life. So, we need that. And as you know, violent crimes and the MMIP crisis, they're interlinked. We need tougher, stronger penalties at the Violence Against Women Act. That's up for reauthorization. So we need, especially with violent crimes and VAWA crimes, we need tougher penalties to protect our most vulnerable, protect our community members.
All right. Thank you to both Governor Stephen Lewis, kicking off our conversation today, along with Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone, both from the Gila River Indian community. Today is May 5th, Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Day. This is an annual event to honor victims, support families, and raise awareness about the disproportionate rates of violence against Indigenous people, particularly women and girls. And we're just getting our conversation started today. We're going to continue with our guests, and we have folks from all across Turtle Island who are going to share today with regard to the work that they're doing, the challenges they face, and progress that's been made as well with regard to MMIP. So stay with us, and if you'd like to join us, 1-800-99-NATIVE is the number to call. Tribes and prediction market companies are each fighting for market share in the rapidly developing and lucrative sports betting business. Wisconsin tribes secured a major victory with exclusive mobile sports betting rights, but a similar effort in Oklahoma is currently dead in the water. We'll hear more on the next Native America Calling.
Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Thank you for listening to Native America Calling. I'm Sean Spruce. Today is National Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Awareness Day. Have recent law and policy changes helped or hindered how law enforcement handle serious crime where you are? What more needs to be done? You can join this conversation today. Just call us at 1-800-996-2848. Again, 1-800-996-2848. Let's get some calls going here from some listeners and share your perspectives with regard to issues all encompassing with regard to National Missing and Murdered Indigenous Persons Awareness Day. And let's continue now with our conversation with tribal leaders from the Gila River Indian community in Arizona. Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone is on the line. And Lieutenant Governor, I want to ask you about Emily Pike and Emily's Law, because the disappearance and the death of Emily Pike remains a really traumatic reminder of what's at stake here. Can you summarize for us, to our listeners, what is Emily's Law and what can it accomplish?
Okay, yes, and you are correct with the tragic death. I mean, it was something we've been pushing for a long time, but then this death kind of added into it, and it became an important role, supporting and bringing that visibility, the advocacy, and the leadership's effort in moving this forward through Arizona. And I know Governor Lewis was right at the front line at the table speaking on behalf of the state of Arizona to push this turquoise alert system, which finally got passed through the state of Arizona, which, for the indigenous people, anybody under 65 who goes missing, who don't meet the normal criteria for the amber alert or the silver alert, is now pushed through as a turquoise alert. But again, it's taking that education to understand from city, town, counties what the turquoise alert systems, and I know Governor can speak a lot more on that because he was at the forefront at the Capitol when they were signing this, so with all of the other tribal leaders within the state of Arizona and the lawmakers that were there for a signing ceremony. So very proud of that moment.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Yeah, please, Governor Lewis, talk more about the turquoise alert system, which was just launched last year. And I think it's really pressing here because we hear issues sometimes with friends and families of victims. They'll complain that the police seem to lack a sense of urgency, or they fail to follow up on details when Native victims are involved, or just the response can be, much slower than it needs to be. And this could potentially all be alleviated through turquoise alerts, not only in Arizona, but other places as well.
Sadly, I think Arizona was long overdue, for a turquoise alert, a statewide alert for MMIP. And, as Lieutenant Governor said earlier, it was the grassroots, it was those victims' families that pushed us to act when the state wasn't. And, we, as a tribal leader and getting support both from both sides of the aisle in Arizona, and having a bipartisan vote to have the turquoise alert, which was introduced, sadly, just weeks after it was introduced in the state legislature, was the tragic case of Emily Pike, a beautiful soul just gone tragically too soon. And so this was named after her in memory, and which really is it's a movement moving forward to address our MMIP, the crisis going on in Arizona. And the thing is, though, right, it's always about the making sure that the turquoise alert is operational. This goes to training. This goes to resources, making sure that tribal law enforcement have a protocol with stateside, with both the local and statewide law enforcement as well. I think this is still a work in progress, sadly, right? We making this operational, making this functional, making this when there is a turquoise alert, who calls a turquoise alert? When is a turquoise alert, being called? What are the protocols that lead to a turquoise alert? That still needs to be worked out. I know there's a lot of frustration across Arizona, and I am as well. To make sure that the turquoise alert does what it says, protects our most vulnerable in these MMIP situations. There was a situation just recently, one of our sister tribes in the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community, a young community member who was found there as well. There was issues about when a turquoise alert should be called. So, I was one of the first, as Lieutenant Governor said, I was one of the first tribal leaders to advocate that we need a turquoise alert. But it's all about making sure that this gets implemented in an effective way, that tribal law enforcement, that tribes play key roles in this as well. And so, this is something that that we need resources, we need training. I think that was said earlier. We need training in regards to the turquoise alert in regards to MMIP. This goes to training and resources and a respect for tribal sovereignty, for our tribal law enforcement, for our tribal subject matter experts, those judges, those social workers as well, that are multidisciplinary, that have to work in concert as well in regards to these recovery efforts to bring back our relatives in these critical, dangerous situations through MMIP types of scenarios as well. So, the turquoise alert, although it is important, we have to continue to push to make sure that there are resources, that there are trainings, that not just resources, but especially resources for our tribal law enforcement, for our tribal nations, but also to make sure that there is resources stateside as well, that those cities, towns, counties, and state, that they understand tribal sovereignty, they understand, the importance of working with tribes, with our victims' families in these recovery efforts. When and where a turquoise alert gets called through this new protocol.
All right, we have Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis and Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone from the Gila River Indian Community in Arizona on the show today. The number to join this conversation, if you would like to share, chime in, maybe offer your perspectives with regard to MMIP issues where you live, 1-800-996-2848. Join the conversation. Again, 1-800-996-2848. Let's head north now to Palmer, Alaska, where we have Alexis Savage on Zoom. And she, of course, is an MMIP advocate. And Alexis, we began the show today talking about Kelly Hunt in Anchorage, and you've helped organize rallies before her body was found. Can you tell us what stood out in her case and what prompted you to initially get involved?
Yeah. So when Kelly had been first reported missing, we had, our usual flyers that went out on social media. And, I was following that, and I had advocated before for someone from my hometown. And I just, really understood that we had to bring just a lot of attention towards her if we wanted to, get anywhere really with her case. So, just the usual flyers that were being shared, but I really noticed that it seemed to be getting cold. And I remember just telling myself, I feel like our community is forgetting about her. We're sharing the flyer on social media, but there's nothing really outside of that. And so I woke up one morning and I had her heavy on my heart. It was something that just wouldn't leave me. And so I asked her family if they wanted to do kind of like what we did was I printed out a bunch of posters of Kelly. Her hometown teams were in the state championships here for basketball, and I knew she would be there if she was, if she was here. And so I asked them, hey, can we just create a rally at our state basketball tournament since your teams are both there? And their Shaktoolik boys team was in the championship. And so I printed out 145 posters. The community came together. They donated. We printed them within about 8 hours and cut them down. I handed them out. And in that arena, we chanted, "Bring Kelly home." And I'm sorry if I get emotional. This is really close to my heart. And from there, that was what brought all the attention towards her. News stations now wanted to cover her story. We had, the news, the sports, the people that air the sports, they were talking about it. Everybody was now talking about Kelly. And that was the urgency that we needed to bring her story back to light.
All right, Alexis. Yeah, thank you for that overview. And you mentioned that you felt the case seemed to be getting cold, and that's what really prompted you to take this on. There's now an investigation into Kelly Hunt's death. What do we know about that? And who's been involved in this case, since the beginning, and any updates you can provide?
Yeah. We don't know what's going on with their case as far as law enforcement goes. Of course, they're waiting for, the autopsy reports and all of that technical stuff to come back. We haven't heard the cause of death or anything. From the very beginning, our biggest MMIP advocate for Alaska, her name is Antonia Comac. She heads all of any type of missing stuff. She quickly gets the flyers going. She deals with her TikTok and gets the story out there, her Facebook. So she is one of the main people that headed this. And where I came in, it was just kind of trying to bring spotlight to it. Where we stand now is we're just doing our own investigation. I feel like we're at war with law enforcement where they're telling, the community that when things like this happen, you shouldn't put yourself in danger and do your own investigative work, and that they're working on it. And frankly, we don't have faith that they're solving these cases. Their track record shows that, and we're Antonia and I have been heading an investigation on our own, and we do have some leads that we're following, but I just feel like when we give those leads to our law enforcement here, I just feel like they don't take it seriously. And for us as women, we just see the need to call out these behaviors that we're seeing to protect our younger women here.
Okay, so you've taken it upon yourselves then to do your own investigation because you don't feel that the Anchorage police are either qualified or just have the inspiration right now, the ambition, or feel the need to do this. Tell me more about what goes into that. Your own investigation, what type of expertise do you need, and what kind of partners do you need to bring in to make sure that you're thorough as well?
Yeah, this is just really us going off of our heart, really. We don't have, any expertise. We're just tired. We're tired of how things are being handled. Our law enforcement here, they failed to bring out their search dogs. Kelly was found not even a block away from where she was last seen. They didn't interview their two people that were last with Kelly until 87 days after. And that was only because the news story picked up the story. It felt like it was more of a backpedaling type of thing that was going on. So it's really looking like us just on social media. We're getting a lot of leads from people that are calling out behaviors, and we're exposing that. I feel like we've just really taken that call to action where we're letting the community know that there are people out there that are targeting our Native women, and we just feel responsible for exposing that. And that's really what we're doing. Is we, as far as we've got a camera out over by her memorial. We're watching who's coming and who's going, and watching the pattern. So it's a lot of different things that come into play. It's exhausting. It's a lot of work, but this is us. Like I said, we're just tired of the lack of urgency from our law enforcement and them continuing to fail. And I'm saying that lightly.
All right. We have time to take a caller here before we go to our next break. We have Yari on the line in Anchorage, Alaska, who's listening to the show today on KNBA. Good morning, Yari. You are on the air.
Good morning. Alexis, first I want to say thank you for being such a huge advocate for our community here in Alaska. Your work doesn't go unnoticed, both you and Antonia. But I wanted to chime in and mention and echo off of some of the things that Alexis says. And I feel like here in Alaska, we've been crying out for help. I feel like we're screaming for help. Our house is on fire and nobody hears us. And it's very frustrating. It's scary. I have a couple of teen Native girls who I'm extremely protective of. Like Alexa said, it's very tiring. It's very worrisome. And I really appreciate all the work Alexis and Antonia are doing because I swear the work that you girls are doing, you're saving lives here. So I just wanted to say I appreciate you guys, and I hope that we'll be heard. I hope that the right people, our own people, will become lawmakers, policymakers. I hope that our own people can join the police force, the state troopers. I hope that we can form all these things. I feel like that's what we need, because we need our own to help our community in terms of MMIWG and MMIP. So we just want to be heard. It's tiring. It's scary. Like Alexis said, my heart shattered for Kelly Hunt, and I've been in the situation with my niece last January when she was murdered here in Alaska, and the person who murdered her was only given a slap on her wrist. She was charged with a manslaughter. So I understand the pain, the worries, and the fears. So I just wanted to chime in on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Yari, very much for joining the conversation. And you mentioned just the need to be heard, the need for these issues to be brought to light and to be acknowledged. So I appreciate you using our forum today, Native America Calling, to do that. And anyone else who would also like to use our show today to share your perspectives and to share your insights, you can do so, 1-800-996-2848. We're going to take another short break. We'll be back and talk more with Alexa Savage. And we also have Lorenda Morgan on the line, who was with the Cheyenne and Arapaho MMIP chapter in Oklahoma.
Skugtash. For more than 40 years, Ramona Farms has revived ancient traditional foods, tepary beans, pinoli, polentas, and more, all from store.ramonafarms.com. Ramona Farms supports this show. Omye.
Kaufman & Associates has over 35 years of experience serving Indian country, supporting growth, transformation, and sustainability of tribal programs. More at kaufmaninc.com, KAUFFMANINC.com.
We're glad you're with us today on Native America Calling. We're talking about MMIP initiatives like the Trump administration's Operation Not Forgotten. And you can join this conversation. Just call us at 1-800-996-2848 or just 1-800-99-NATIVE. One of our guests today, Alexis Savage, is up in Palmer, Alaska, where she is an MMIP advocate. And Alexis, we just took a caller there before the break, and that person just voiced so much dissatisfaction and pain and anguish with regard to how MMIP cases are handled there in Alaska, and specifically just with regard to the lack of follow through from police. And I'm curious to know, I mean, we even heard her mention, the idea of having more Native people working in law enforcement and just having more support on the ground. But what do you see as at least a first step towards just bridging that mistrust that so many Alaska Native people have of police and just getting more engagement from law enforcement with regard to MMIP?
Yeah, I really feel like some laws or procedures need to be changed in their department, because we could go round for round with them all day long about what they're doing and not doing. And we continue to call them out. And I feel like the difference that we're making right now is that we're bringing out factual information, because we are doing our own investigation, and we can come back and say these things. Well, so and so said you didn't call them down to the to your station until 87 days later, because we actually asked that question, right? We're actually challenging what's happening. So I really do feel like a lot of stuff needs to be changed in terms of how they work from the inside as far as their procedures go. And they need to be held accountable to following those procedures. I know that they have some procedures in place now, and they're not following them based off of their own rules. Like they say if someone goes off of their regular pattern, like Kelly did, that raises the urgency on whether or not they're able to get simple things like warrants and, stuff to look at social media and all this stuff. And I just feel like that's not happening. They're not using search dogs. That's a resource that, we can't just go and demand that they do. They have to do it on their own. And they're not doing that. There's a lot of stuff that they're not doing. They didn't ask for the camera footage around the neighborhood. And if that was a procedure that they had to follow, I feel like a lot of these cases could be solved.
Now, you shared earlier that your team is facilitating your own investigation with regard to the death of Kelly Hunt. Any thoughts in terms of the timeline as to when your investigation will be complete, and what do you hope to do with that information when you have it?
Yeah, I can't say how long the timeline can be. We're just, chugging along as we go. We've got now a community effort where people are coming to us now and saying we want to help, and we're utilizing their help. And it's been extremely beautiful to see our community come together, because we're seeing that a lot of this violence is touching almost every street in our communities. Our young girls are being targeted in a huge way, and it's mainly Alaska Native girls. I can't tell you how long that timeline is going to be. We will work and we will fight until we got justice. We really feel like Kelly didn't just end up in that ravine. A 19-year-old girl who was on her way to school, she didn't just go there to die. And the narrative that our law enforcement has in these cases, a lot of times when a woman is dumped on the side of the road, is that it's not suspicious. Well, we're here to fight that. We're here to prove that with our own investigation.
All right, Alexis, thanks for coming on the show today. 1-800-99-NATIVE. Still time to join this conversation if you would like to do so. Let's bring our next guest into the conversation now. This is Lorinda Morgan, who joins us from Oklahoma City, and she is the Cheyenne and Arapaho MMIP chapter chairwoman and the governmental affairs officer for the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes of Oklahoma. And Lorinda, hello again. Thank you for joining us. Now, you're at the Oklahoma State Capitol today for an MMIP awareness event. Is there progress there in getting law enforcement at the state and federal level to acknowledge your concerns?
Yes. So I want to thank you for having me on today. Yes, today we are having an MMIP awareness event here at the Oklahoma State Capitol. This morning, the Oklahoma House of Representatives recognized the May 5th as National MMIP Awareness Day with a floor citation where myself and our tribal leadership from the Cheyenne Arapaho were able to be recognized on the House floor. We are going to participate in a Oklahoma Senate citation recognizing MMIP Day as well this afternoon. We also worked to pass the Senate Bill 1636, which is an Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation cold case bill, which was inspired by a Cheyenne Arapaho MMIP case of Lisa Pennington and Cheryl Ginzer, who were killed at the Oklahoma State Fair in the 1980s. So right after the MMIP citation, they went into the House vote for the Senate Bill 1636 while we were there. They asked us to stay while they did the vote. So I also, I believe that we are making progress here in Oklahoma because our Oklahoma Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, was here as well to speak to the MMIP families. And in the past year, I've been working with his office, and he has created an MMIP task force under his agency and to address law enforcement needs for MMIP. So we've been going through that process. He's had statewide listening sessions at various tribes and gathering information, working with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation to address law enforcement regarding MMIP. So they're also going to be working to as he says, he wants to do some prevention and also address cold cases and active cases to bring the numbers down, because from their standpoint, what they're seeing is that MMIP cases are still rising in Oklahoma. And so our chapter, Cheyenne Arapaho Tribes, and when I say our chapter, we don't really have like a chapter that by itself. Our chapter is basically our tribe. So our tribal programs like social services or Department of Transportation, any of our tribal programs do MMIP awareness through their programs. Like transportation, we have a transit system. They get with other tribes and they do education on signs of human trafficking, or we do domestic violence awareness. We do all of the prevention measures to educate our tribal members so that they won't become an MMIP. Currently, we're working with the youth. So I feel like, and that's just what our tribe is doing. All the other tribes are doing, addressing MMIP in their area as well. But on the state level, we have OSBI and the state AG, and then they work alongside with the DOJ here in our state. We have a MMIP liaison in Oklahoma.
Okay. Lorinda, wow, that's a lot going on there. Yeah, really. I applaud you and your partners there with all of this activity. I want to ask you more about Oklahoma Senate Bill 1636 that you mentioned briefly, because that has to do with cold cases in Oklahoma and how those are handled. So give us a little more detail.
So like with the Pennington-Ginzer case, that bill was, that case was a murder case from the 1980s. It was a kidnapping murder case. That bill has been, there were some issues with evidence. I think they had like a suspect, but they had trouble with, connecting evidence. Cases like that can now be re-reviewed with new technology, like that we have digital forensic labs, and all this new technology that we have today. There's a lot of old cold cases, not just tribal or MMIP, but cold cases in the state that, may be able to be solved with the use of technology. So that bill is going to allow those cases to be investigated with the new technology that we have.
Okay. Lorinda, earlier in the show, we were talking about Operation Not Forgotten with the tribal leaders from Gila River in Arizona. How have you seen it working there in Oklahoma?
Well, with us, because Oklahoma is so unique and it has, we deal with, we have the McGirt here in Oklahoma and a lot of overlap in jurisdictions. I think that, earlier, we supported legislation from Congressman Mark Wayne Mullen for tribes to work with U.S. Marshals. And I think that a lot of the federal partners, any type of services, like the tribal leader said earlier, any of the resources or funding that the federal government has to address this issue is welcome, because our tribe, Governor Wassenae and I were on the Secretary Tribal Advisory Committee, and that was something that we advocated for as a tribe, along with Oglala and some of the other tribes, for public safety, for more funding for victim services, to address MMIP, for manpower, for just more funding within our tribal police and public safety. And so I think that, like the other tribal leader said, I agree with everything that he said, that we do need that support and those funding sources.
Okay.
We need more.
Right, Lorinda. And I'm hearing funding needs and also training needs. And I'm interested in learning more about specific types of training, especially with law enforcement. What do you think would be most beneficial?
Yes. So we actually at Cheyenne Arapaho Tribes hosted a law enforcement training. We did one in a collaboration with the University of Tennessee and the National COPS organization. We provided it free at the Cheyenne Arapaho tribes, and we saw a need for, we heard from the law enforcement that attended. We had not only Oklahoma law enforcement, but we had law enforcement from out of state, from all levels, from city, county sheriff, BIA, DOJ, OSBI. We had, all levels of law enforcement came to this training, and the training covered DNA analysis, forensics, medical examiners, unidentified remains, investigations from, like a forensic analysis standpoint, and just as gathering, just all of it encompassed in one missing and murdered Indigenous people investigation training is what we provided. And when we heard the feedback from the attendees that they needed more, because it also included the updates on the laws. Like in Oklahoma, we have Marcy's Law, Crime Victims Law. We have IDA's Law. We have, the Casey's Alert. And now we have this other OSBI cold case bill. So all of this legislation, some of the law enforcement may not be up to par or know about it. Like you have a small town, rural Oklahoma town, the sheriff there may not know, So that's how we got the AG involved, is telling him, hey, like, law enforcement is needing this, they need updates, they need more training, they need more assistance on jurisdictional overlaps and, cases. So that's kind of how we got to this point.
Lorinda, we heard from Alexis Savage up in Anchorage, Alaska, or Palmer, Alaska, but speaking specifically with regard to a case up in Anchorage about just this incredible mistrust and lack of confidence that Alaska Native people have with some of the law enforcement agencies there in Alaska. How about in Oklahoma? Do Native people have that same level of distrust, or have relationships maybe improved somewhat over the years?
Yes, we do. But we're working on those relationships, and we, so I can only speak for Cheyenne Arapaho, but our law enforcement is obviously the BIA in our jurisdiction. And so we do have a good working relationship with our BIA law enforcement. We advocated for our chief of police was a tribal member. And so we, that helped us, and I think helps our people have helped that trust issue when we're seeing our tribal police, our BIA police in our communities, and they are tribal. And so we also have been working with the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. So the two agents that are hired to address MMIP are both tribal. They are Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation agents. One is Choctaw, one is Cherokee. That helps with, some of the trust issues. And then the DOJ MMIP liaison is Kiowa, from the Kiowa tribe. And then a lot of the agents that, come out to work with the tribes are somewhat tribal here in Oklahoma. So I think that we, as tribal advocates and tribes, reaching out to build those relationships helps show our people, that we're addressing issues, even not just to build it for the right reasons, but to build it to correct what's been done wrong. And that's what we're doing here. And that's what, one of the things why I've been working so closely with law enforcement.
All right. Lorinda, it sounds like a busy and a windy day there in Oklahoma City. You take care of yourself.
Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, we're outside.
All righty. And with that, we're going to have to wrap up the show. But big thanks to our guests today, Lorinda Morgan, Alexis Savage, Governor Stephen Rowe Lewis, and also Lieutenant Governor Regina Antone. Join us again tomorrow for a discussion about the struggle for market share in the rapidly evolving world of sports betting and prediction markets. Hope you'll tune in. I'm Sean Spruce. Enjoy the rest of your day.
support from Davis Keelan Law Firm, a New Mexico firm standing with Native families suffering catastrophic loss. When tragedy strikes Indian country, Davis Keelan fights to restore stability, dignity, and justice, bringing a voice to Native families and communities for 20 years. More information, daviskeelan.com.
Support from Rodale, publisher of A Feather and a Fork, 125 Intertribal Dishes from an Indigenous Food Warrior by Crystal Wapipa with Amy Page Condon, and a foreword by Tommy Orange is now available for purchase wherever books are sold. Who protects Indian country? Amerind does. As the only 100% tribally owned insurance carrier, Amerind helps strengthen tribal communities by providing reliable insurance coverage and keeping dollars in Indian country. From property and liability to commercial auto and tribal workers' compensation, Amerind is here to protect what matters. Celebrating 40 years of serving Indian country. Learn more at amerind.com. That's AMERIND.com.
Native America Calling is produced in the Annenberg National Native Voice Studios in Albuquerque, New Mexico by Quantic Broadcast Corporation, a Native nonprofit media organization. Funding is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting with support from the Public Radio Satellite Service. Music is by Brent Michael Davids. Native Voice One, the Native American Radio Network.